Emily Carter and her seemingly perfect life were about to unravel in a way no one in Crestwood could have imagined. One black trash bag, one shocking discovery, and a secret that would rock a small town to its core. It was a morning like any other in the quiet town of Crestwood. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft golden light over the tree-lined streets. Birds chirped in the yards, and the scent of fresh coffee drifted from kitchen windows. Neighbors greeted each other casually as they walked their dogs, and children laughed as they waited for the school bus. The town, small and close-knit, had always prided itself on being safe, a place where everyone knew each other and nothing truly shocking ever happened. But that calm was about to shatter in a way no one could have imagined. At the edge of the old Willow Street neighborhood, a garbage collector was making his usual rounds. He had been on this route for years, and he knew almost every house by heart. That morning, as he approached a rundown, abandoned property, he noticed a black trash bag that seemed oddly out of place. It was not uncommon to find refuse dumped around the empty lot, but something about this bag drew his attention. It was heavy, and the shape inside didn't resemble the usual debris. Curiosity and caution battled inside him as he lifted the bag to inspect it. What he saw inside made him stumble backward, a chill running down his spine. Wrapped tightly in old cloth, there was a tiny, lifeless baby. The infant had been abandoned in the trash, hidden away as if someone had wanted to erase all evidence of its existence. The collector froze, unable to process what he had found. His hands trembled as he dialed emergency services, calling in a report that would ripple through the town like a shockwave. Within minutes, police cars arrived, their sirens cutting through the quiet morning air. Yellow tape stretched across the street, marking the area as a crime scene. Curious neighbors gathered at a distance, peering over fences and whispering in disbelief. It was the kind of news that towns like Crestwood had never faced, the kind of horror that belonged in stories from faraway cities, not in their own backyard. Detectives moved quickly, photographing the scene, collecting evidence, and meticulously documenting every detail. The black trash bag, the wrapping, even the footprints around the abandoned house became clues in a mystery that seemed impossible to unravel. Questions swirled through the minds of investigators. Who could commit such a heartless act? Why would someone dispose of a baby in this way? Theories began to form, each more troubling than the last. As word spread, the town's mood shifted from curiosity to fear and anger. Parents kept their children close, wondering if someone capable of such cruelty was living among them. Conversations in coffee shops, grocery stores, and schools were dominated by speculation and disbelief. The small, tight-knit community, which had always been a place of trust and familiarity, now found itself on edge, watching each other and questioning everything they thought they knew. The ordinary morning had transformed into a nightmare that would haunt Crestwood for weeks to come. The discovery of the baby was not just a tragic event. It was the spark that would ignite one of the most shocking and complex cases the town had ever seen. Every step forward in the investigation seemed to uncover more questions than answers, and the shadow of that morning stretched over the community, changing its rhythm and forcing everyone to confront the unimaginable. The calm streets, the morning routines, the laughter of children, all of it had been pierced by a reality no one in Crestwood was prepared to face. The investigation into the abandoned baby quickly zeroed in on potential suspects, and the name that shocked everyone most was Emily Carter. To the outside world, she seemed like a model citizen, a young woman who had spent her life in the spotlight for all the right reasons. She was the pride of Crestwood High School, a cheerleader with perfect posture, bright smiles, and a talent that had earned her the title of the town's beauty queen the year before. People admired her confidence and poise, and she was a familiar face at every community event. No one could reconcile the image of Emily with the kind of crime being investigated. To suggest that she could be involved seemed impossible, yet evidence was beginning to paint a troubling picture. Detectives had spent days analyzing footage from nearby surveillance cameras, and Emily's movements had placed her in the vicinity of the abandoned house the night the baby was discovered. While the footage did not capture her interacting with the bag directly, it showed her walking down the street at an odd hour, alone and carrying what appeared to be a large bundle. Police also found traces of fibers on the trash bag that matched clothing Emily was known to wear, adding to the suspicion. To the investigators, these pieces of evidence were enough to consider her a primary suspect, but to the town, it felt like a betrayal. Rumors spread quickly, fueled by social media posts, whispers in school hallways, and speculation at local diners. Friends of Emily began to question her character, unsure if they had ever really known her. Parents of younger children grew protective, shielding their kids from someone they had once seen as a role model. The community's perception of Emily shifted overnight, and the weight of suspicion bore down on her, isolating her from the life she had once enjoyed. Emily herself remained largely silent, cooperating with authorities but offering few explanations. Her family stood by her, insisting that she could never do such a thing, but even they could not deny the troubling alignment of evidence and circumstance. The police were careful to separate public opinion from facts, yet the court of public opinion had already begun to weigh heavily against her. The town's fascination with the case grew with each new report, every new detail casting shadows over the image of the Golden Girl. As the investigation continued, detectives began to dig into Emily's background for any possible motives. They looked into her social circles, her school life, and even personal diaries, searching for clues that might explain how someone so celebrated could be implicated in such a tragic event. They discovered that Emily had been under pressure in ways most people never noticed. Between academic expectations, cheerleading responsibilities, and public appearances as the beauty queen, her life had been carefully managed and heavily scrutinized. This raised questions about whether there had been unseen struggles, mistakes made in secrecy, or someone trying to manipulate circumstances to frame her. The idea that a young woman who seemed to have everything could also be connected to a crime so dark fascinated and horrified the town. Every conversation, every glance in the hallways of Crestwood High carried a weight that had never been there before. People wondered what secrets lay behind the smiles and trophies, what unseen pressures might push someone to the edge. The investigation into Emily Carter had transformed from a simple search for answers into a broader examination of appearances, trust, and the hidden complexity of human lives. The story of the cheerleader and the abandoned baby had captivated Crestwood, setting the stage for a trial that would grip the town and challenge everyone's assumptions about who they thought they knew. The trial of Emily Carter began with a sense of anticipation that gripped the town of Crestwood like nothing before. The courthouse was packed from early morning, every seat filled with people eager to witness the proceedings. Families, neighbors, journalists, and even former classmates crowded the benches, some whispering nervously, others staring in disbelief. Cameras were set up outside, broadcasting snippets of the case to a wider audience, and the streets surrounding the courthouse were lined with onlookers who had come to see the town's most famous young woman face the most serious accusations imaginable. Inside the courtroom, tension hung heavy in the air. The prosecution presented a meticulously constructed case, detailing the timeline of events leading up to the discovery of the baby in the trash bag. They described the surveillance footage, the forensic evidence, and the traces of fibers connecting Emily to the scene. Every word was measured to build a narrative of premeditation, suggesting that a young woman who appeared perfect on the outside could have made a desperate, calculated decision in secret. The prosecution painted a chilling picture of someone trying to erase a part of her life, leaving behind only fear and tragedy in her wake. The defense worked to counter these claims, emphasizing the circumstantial nature of much of the evidence. They highlighted inconsistencies in witness statements and questioned the reliability of forensic conclusions. The defense argued that the footage merely showed Emily walking down a street and that the fibers on the bag could have been transferred innocently. They also noted that no eyewitness had ever seen her interacting with the trash bag directly. The narrative shifted slightly, presenting Emily not as a criminal mastermind, but as a young woman under scrutiny and pressure, potentially caught in a situation beyond her control. As testimony unfolded, the courtroom became a place of suspense and uncertainty. Neighbors, classmates, and experts offered conflicting accounts, each new piece of information adding layers to the mystery. A neighbor reported seeing a figure near the abandoned house, but their description did not match Emily. A forensic expert revealed DNA traces on the bag that could not be linked to her, introducing doubt into the jury's mind. Each revelation seemed to challenge the assumptions the town had made in the weeks following the baby's discovery. The emotional weight of the trial also became clear. The jury was not just considering facts. They were weighing a complex portrait of a young woman whose life had been in the spotlight since childhood. The courtroom was quiet during these moments, the kind of silence that comes when people are forced to confront the difficult reality that appearances can be deceiving. Families in the audience shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension between justice and empathy. Throughout the trial, the case gained national attention, drawing in viewers and readers fascinated by the contradictions in Emily's story. Here was a cheerleader and beauty queen, celebrated and adored, standing accused of a crime so dark it seemed unimaginable. The trial became more than a legal proceeding. It was a study of character, reputation, and the unpredictable nature of human behavior. Every piece of evidence, every witness, and every argument contributed to a suspenseful narrative that left everyone wondering how the story would end, and whether the Golden Girl of Crestwood could truly be guilty of the crime that had shaken the town to its core. Just when the trial seemed to be leaning in one direction, an unexpected witness came forward, shifting the momentum of the case in a way no one could have predicted. The witness was a former classmate of Emily's, someone who had always stayed in the background, but now held information that could change the perception of everything the jury had been hearing. Her testimony revealed that Emily had sought help months earlier from a local clinic, anonymously asking questions about pregnancy, medical care, and options she could consider without anyone discovering her situation. Until that moment, no one outside of Emily's closest circle had known about the possibility of a secret pregnancy, and the revelation added a layer of complexity to the case that stunned both the courtroom and the town. The prosecution had built its narrative around calculated concealment, but this new testimony painted a different picture. Emily was no longer just a suspect who might have intentionally harmed a child. She was a young woman facing fear, shame, and pressure, trying to navigate a situation that she had not been able to share openly. The jury listened intently as the witness described Emily's careful steps to maintain anonymity, reaching out for advice in a way that suggested panic rather than malice. The story of a secret struggle resonated in the courtroom, challenging the black and white portrayal of guilt the prosecution had established. Forensic experts revisited their findings in light of this testimony, considering whether the presence of other DNA traces on the trash bag could indicate involvement from someone outside of Emily's immediate circle. The idea that she might have acted alone became less certain, and doubts began to creep into the minds of both investigators and jurors. Every argument, every piece of evidence now had to be reconsidered within a new framework, one that allowed for fear, secrecy, and desperation to explain behaviors that previously seemed sinister. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. Observers who had once seen Emily as a villain began to view her more sympathetically, recognizing the intense pressure she had faced behind closed doors. Reporters covered the development widely, highlighting the contrast between the town's perception of her and the reality revealed by the witness. Conversations outside the courthouse changed from speculation about criminal intent to discussions about the hidden struggles young people endure and the ways society responds to secrecy, shame, and vulnerability. Even the prosecution adjusted its approach, acknowledging the emotional and psychological complexities that Emily's situation presented. The narrative of premeditated wrongdoing no longer seemed sufficient to explain the events leading to the baby's discovery. Instead, the case became a study of circumstance, decisions made under extreme stress, and the consequences of secrecy in a community where appearances are everything. The testimony of the unexpected witness did not solve the case, but it reframed it entirely. Emily was no longer simply the golden girl accused of a terrible act. She became a symbol of the pressures and hidden realities that could exist beneath perfect smiles and public success. The trial, which had seemed like a straightforward path to judgment, now required careful consideration of context, motivation, and human complexity. Every day in the courtroom reinforced the idea that truth is rarely simple and that understanding a person's choices often requires looking far beyond what can be seen on the surface. The case had taken a turn that nobody anticipated, leaving the town and the jury in suspense, struggling to reconcile what they had thought they knew with what was now unfolding before their eyes. After weeks of testimony, arguments, and careful deliberation, the trial of Emily Carter reached its climax. The courtroom was tense, every person present aware that the verdict would not only determine Emily's fate, but also leave a lasting mark on the town of Crestwood. The jurors had spent long hours examining the evidence, weighing conflicting testimonies, and considering the impact of the unexpected witness who revealed the possibility of a secret pregnancy. The complexity of the case had turned what seemed like a straightforward criminal trial into a deeply nuanced evaluation of circumstance, character, and human vulnerability. When the jury filed back into the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric. Families and friends of Emily sat with nervous anticipation, while the general public and press leaned forward, eager to hear the outcome. The foreperson cleared their throat and began to speak, recounting the careful deliberations that had taken place behind closed doors. After what felt like an eternity, the verdict was delivered. Emily was cleared of the most serious charges, the jury finding that there was reasonable doubt about her direct involvement in abandoning the baby. The courtroom erupted with a mixture of relief, disbelief, and quiet contemplation. It was a moment that validated some of the hopes held by her family and supporters, while challenging the assumptions of those who had quickly judged her in the weeks following the discovery. However, Emily was not entirely absolved. The jury determined that she was guilty of lesser offenses connected to concealment and failure to seek help appropriately. These charges carried a sentence, serving as a reminder that while she might not have committed the most heinous act alleged, her choices and actions still had consequences. The outcome was a delicate balance between accountability and compassion, acknowledging both the complexity of her situation and the tragedy that had unfolded. The town of Crestwood experienced a mix of emotions in the aftermath of the verdict. Relief was tempered by reflection, as residents considered how quickly they had assumed guilt based on appearances, reputations, and limited information. Conversations in homes, cafes, and workplaces shifted from speculation to introspection. Many realized that they had judged Emily without understanding the pressures she had faced, the secrecy she had maintained, and the fear that had guided her decisions. The case became a cautionary tale, highlighting the ways society often scrutinizes young women in the spotlight while overlooking the hidden struggles they endure. For Emily, life would never return entirely to the way it had been. Her public image, once untouchable, had been irrevocably altered. The beauty queen and cheerleader who had inspired admiration and pride was now seen in a more complex light as a young woman who had faced fear, made mistakes, and endured public scrutiny on an unimaginable scale. The trial had tested her resilience, her family's support, and the community's capacity for empathy. The story of the baby trash bag case became more than a sensational headline. It became a lesson in understanding, judgment, and the hidden dimensions of human experience. Crestwood moved forward, forever changed by the events that had unfolded, carrying with it the memory of a trial that challenged assumptions, revealed secrets, and ultimately reminded everyone that truth is rarely simple. The echoes of the case lingered, a testament to the fragility of appearances and the complexity of lives lived under pressure, leaving the town and its residents with a story they would never forget.